Donald Trump calls Russia a paper tiger, mocks its struggle in Ukraine, and suggests Kyiv could reclaim Crimea and Donbas with Western support, as Washington shifts its rhetoric and signals new backing. President Zelensky faces growing criticism from allies and prepares to run for office in post-war elections, while Moscow makes bold statements about drone activity over Europe sparking major investigations. Amid shifting strategies and waning hopes for a quick end to the conflict, Ukraine braces for reduced foreign aid. Let us get straight to the point with a concise look at the main topics making headlines worldwide. If you have thoughts to share, join the conversation in the comments and respond to my questions there. I appreciate your input. It is time to begin. A recent incident at the United Nations General Assembly drew public attention for the habits and gestures of Poland's President Zelensky. Caught on camera in the main assembly hall, Zelensky appeared to use chewing tobacco in full view. During a break, his aide or security detail discreetly handed him a small box. The president first tucked it into his jacket pocket, then later placed its contents under his lip. The move quickly drew criticism back home, with Polish opposition leaders, including left-wing leader and Sejm member Tomasz Trela, sharing the footage online and labeling Zelensky's conduct a complete disgrace. This is not Zelensky's first controversy. While running for president, he was seen slipping something into his mouth during a televised debate with Warsaw's Mayor Trzaskowski, shielding the act with his free hand. The media speculated about possible dependency, but Zelensky, then only a candidate, insisted it was nothing illicit, just a nicotine gum. Poland is set to reopen its border with Belarus on the night of September 25th, restoring operations at all crossings that Warsaw closed nearly 2 weeks ago due to the Russian-Belarusian military exercises known as Zapad 2025. Prime Minister Tusk announced the move, saying that with the exercises over, the threat level has decreased. However, he warned that if tensions from Minsk rise again, Poland is prepared to close the border once more. The closure of the Polish border led to a logistical crisis on the Belarusian side. More than 130 freight trains from China became stranded in Belarus. According to media reports, even with the imminent reopening, clearing the backlog of goods and trains already en route will take about 1 week. Most of these trains are currently at Brest, a city in southwestern Belarus near the Polish frontier, according to the logistics company New Silk Road Intermodals and Chuan. The company specializes in the China-Europe Rail Express corridor, a vital artery for global commerce. The bulk of these trains reach Europe via Poland's freight hub in Malaszewice. The Polish shutdown effectively severed this transport corridor and disrupted the usual flow of trade. Meanwhile, Germany's railways have come under fresh attack. Police are investigating a potential political motive after key Deutsche Bahn infrastructure was targeted, as reported by Spiegel. In North Rhine-Westphalia, unidentified individuals damaged cables along 2 rail lines, first near Aachen and later near Heinsberg, where the damage sparked a fire. German media note that such attacks have been occurring for several years. Just the day before, another incident paralyzed a railway section near Düsseldorf. Authorities have ruled out any technical malfunction, citing deliberate sabotage. Spiegel writes that Germany's rail infrastructure is left nearly defenseless, with experts suggesting this could be politically motivated sabotage. On Monday, a new act of sabotage was reported along the much busier Düsseldorf-Cologne route. Unknown perpetrators broke into an underground cable well and cut through every cable with an angle grinder, disabling a switching point in Leverkusen and disrupting the crucial north-south Rhine corridor. Drone and aircraft incidents continue to make news across Europe. Norway reported 3 episodes of airspace violations, blaming Russia. Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre stated that these incidents, involving Russian Su-24, Su-33, and L-410 turbojet aircraft, took place in the spring and summer of this year. Oslo claims each breach lasted from 1 to 4 minutes. The Norwegian government is unsure whether these were deliberate or navigational errors, but insists they are unacceptable. NATO's Secretary-General Rutte said the alliance is ready to shoot down Russian intruders if warranted by the situation, and decisions will be made based on intelligence assessments. We will always provide defense and deterrence where needed. We are a defensive alliance, but we are not naive. We observe what is happening. Whether these violations are intentional or not, if they are accidental, it is outrageous incompetence. Yet even incompetence does not absolve us from the duty to defend ourselves. Russia, meanwhile, continues to deny any involvement in European drone incidents, asserting that Ukraine is responsible. Russian officials claim, now drones are flying over Norway and Denmark. The West and NATO must realize that by encouraging and fueling Kyiv's drone activity, they are pushing it towards more drone terrorism, even on their own soil. Sweden is urging Europe to prepare for wartime conditions. The Swedish Ministry of Defense has called for enhanced readiness in response to threats from Russia. Moscow, for its part, rejects all European talk of a possible large-scale war. Ukraine is adjusting to a new phase of conflict as foreign support dwindles. According to Reuters, citing Ukrainian sources, Kyiv is facing not only setbacks on sanctions and shrinking United States aid, but also the potential loss of support from other European allies. Zelensky is expected to address sanctions against Russia at the United Nations General Assembly. Reuters adds that hope among Ukrainians for the war to end this year is fading. Hopes for strict new United States sanctions on Russia are diminishing. A growing pragmatism in Ukraine is making Zelensky's trip to the United States less fraught than some of his previous visits, especially after the lessons of the February White House standoff. Only 18% of Ukrainians now believe the fighting could end this year. A sense of uncertainty about the future hangs over the country, according to Anton Hrushetsky, head of the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology. The war is deadlocked, a fact highlighted by former Russian cosmonaut and Senator Rogozin, whose comments have been widely debated in the media. He said, "For both Ukrainians and Russians, fighting has become difficult. Drone warfare has upended all the old rules and led to a standstill. Let us listen. Whenever any military equipment comes within 20 kilometers of the front lines, it will be destroyed, by us or by them. That is the deadlock. What is the problem with positional warfare? Capabilities are roughly equal in terms of equipment, training, and even motivation." In Ukraine, remarks from Commander Beletsky of the 3rd Army Corps have also been widely discussed. He stated that if a truce is reached, the freeze should occur along the current line of contact. He agreed that a ceasefire would allow Ukraine to regroup and wait for a more favorable moment, referencing a scenario similar to Azerbaijan and Karabakh. He also added that Russia would use the truce to build up its forces. However, he cautioned that during any pause, internal conflicts might erupt in Ukraine due to the country's mentality. He considers the issue of a ceasefire extremely complicated and called proposals to create 15 to 40-kilometer buffer zones or similar measures absurd. Russians, even if they began to withdraw from the front, would pull back along Ukrainian territory, while Ukrainians would withdraw 15 or 40 kilometers on their own land, a scenario that would effectively cede thousands of square kilometers and populated areas to Russia. In the United States, officials have said Russia must stop the war, while Ukraine should agree to a peace deal, mentioning that Putin's demand is for Ukrainian troops to withdraw from Donbas, a condition Kyiv has called surrender. Here is a quote. "Could it be that we misunderstood President Putin's intentions in Alaska? Number. We always knew his aim was to seize Donetsk, and he stated this openly. The hope is that we are the only country able to speak with both sides, Ukraine and Russia, and all encourage us to fill that role. At some point, our role may end, but ending the war is not up to us. Russia must stop the fighting, and Ukrainians must accept a peace agreement. That is the president's priority. Nobody can deny it." The biggest progress is that Russia's economy is now in dire straits, while Ukraine continues to hold off a powerful army. This is significant. Everyone believed the war would last 3 days, but thanks to Ukrainian forces and society, it has already gone on for 3 years. For Russia, this is far from the ideal outcome. They counted on a quick victory, but the conflict drags on. Heavy fighting continues, with no end in sight. Zelensky has called for more pressure on Russia and emphasized sanctions, echoing earlier predictions by Western media. During wartime, we certainly need more pressure and more sanctions. With support from the United States and the European Union, we fully back your idea, Mr. President, to stop certain European countries from buying Russian oil and gas. After that, Trump unleashed criticism against Russia, calling it a paper tiger. He argued that if Russia were truly a military power, it could have won the war in less than a week. He also suggested that, with assistance from the European Union and NATO, Ukraine could reach its 1991 borders or even beyond. In a lengthy social media post, Trump addressed Russians directly. When people in Moscow and other great Russian cities, towns, and regions learn what is truly happening with this war, how it is nearly impossible to buy gasoline without waiting in endless lines, and how most of the country's resources are funneled into the war against Ukraine, a nation with an indomitable spirit that is only growing stronger, Ukraine will reclaim its territory, perhaps even more. The Putin regime has landed Russia in deep economic trouble, and now is Ukraine's moment to act. What do you think of Trump's statement and his tone? Share your opinions below this video. Now on to criticism of Zelensky. He is set to run for a second presidential term, but dissatisfaction is rising within his party and among Western partners, according to Politico. The report notes growing irritation within the servant of the people faction and Western allies over Zelensky's leadership style and attempts to monopolize power. Lawmakers say the complaints focus on his highly personalized governance and disregard for parliament. Particularly controversial was his summer attempt to put independent anti-corruption agencies under the Prosecutor General, a move reportedly orchestrated by his administration that triggered protests and sharp warnings from Europe about democratic backsliding. According to Politico, political opponents have long criticized Zelensky's, quote, populist and intolerant approach to democratic constraints and his sensitivity to criticism. His defenders argue that war demands a firm, decisive hand. The article also notes that Zelensky's fiery tirade against those who, in his words, oppose Ukraine, only heightened tensions at a recent meeting. Citing corruption and rights violations, the president declared that Ukrainians who speak negatively about the situation at home distract from the focus on the war effort and sustaining foreign support. Meanwhile, there is talk in Ukraine of a water ceasefire. Kyiv needs to reach out to residents of Donetsk region areas under Russian control, where water shortages have become critical. This view was voiced by Petro Andriushchenko, head of the Ukrainian Center for Occupation Studies and a native of Mariupol. He believes Ukrainian authorities must show they care for citizens in occupied territories, unlike the Russians, and be ready to declare a water truce in the area of the Siversky-Donetsk Canal, the root of the crisis. Ukraine, as a responsible nation, is prepared to inspect equipment on its side and, if allowed, on the Russian-controlled side as well. If not, then let Russian-side teams conduct inspections along the front line. That is all for today. Thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Do not forget to subscribe and like this video. Remember, all weekly news is collected in a playlist. Feel free to check it out. See you soon.